Popol Vuh, translated by Dennis Tedlock, provides us with a variation on the themes of creation from a native Mesoamerican perspective. This mythology is not often covered, is less well recognized, so it's a good one to cover now that we've got a good sense of myth, mythology, cosmology, and we can compare some of what we already know about Greek and Roman myths as well as Egyptian myths. The objectives of this presentation are to briefly present the Mayan creation stories comparatively and to discuss the themes of Mayan creation myths. What is there ever at the beginning? Some creation stories start with nothing. Others have a primordial egg that cracks. Still others, the primordial soup or animal, the turtle, whatever. Here we begin with the power of the word that, when spoken, brings or calls forth the thing into being. The power is in language, not unlike what we see in Todorov's The Conquest of America. The gods themselves have the names of their forms or of their roles in creation, such as Heart of the Sky or the plumed serpent. The sea alone is pooled under the sky in a quiet, static emptiness just before the murmurs and ripples begin. The interactions of the primordial Titan-like gods work as forces of nature to bring about the creatures, each with purposes. Thus, they can be considered alongside of Titans in other pantheons. These are the primordial forces of nature that help the gods shape Earth from their calling it forth. They agree that they need to create a creature that can speak and also name and praise what they have created, delighting in its beauty. They needed someone to count the days and to praise them for this creation. With sky, earth, and water, they begin to finish by calling forth animals. But they cannot speak, these animals. The gods have failed to create the counter of days and the praisers of gods. All creatures that cannot praise or count the days are reduced to being eaten or killed by others. The counting of the days and tracking of the cycles of the earth were important to track the cycle of life and be able to look back in order to predict the future. The namer and keeper of days was needed as the first failed attempts came forth. The mason and sculptor also fail. The first human doesn't stick together. So they go back to the drawing board. They're trying to create a keeper of the days and someone to pray to them. So it seems like they try to create more gods for these things and give them this task. The gods are still trying to create those who will appreciate their work and deliver back to them their names and praise them with those words. So they turn to the godmother and grandfather. These two recommend wood carvings, but they had no heart or minds. They could not remember to count the days and were dry. Is this a description of the fossil record? Could this account for them digging up skeletons of humans? And we get the theme from all religions about a flood. So these failures are punished. Does this justify the killing of others who may represent these early others, displaced by the true people of the earth? They are welcome nowhere. They cannot speak the language. The failures explain the origin of monkeys that look like humans but cannot count or praise the gods because they cannot speak. This all came before the sun. And Seven Macaw rises up to claim that place. His pride is big, and he only reflects the sun, but takes credit for it and the moon. And thus begins the story of Seven Macaw. The story of Seven Macaw has Hanupu and Zbalanque. They see evil in Seven Macaw's attempt at self-magnification. So they plot against him and look to deceive him, to humble him, and to prevent others from raising themselves up as God. Seven Macaw has two sons, Zipacna, creator of mountains, who claims to be the maker of earth, and Earthquake, the mover of mountains. We shall explain the defeat of each one of those who engaged in self-magnification. They use blowguns against Seven Macaw, do the boys. The first shot of Hanupu breaks his teeth loose. Does a macaw have teeth? Seven Macaw does, but he gets Hanupu's arm. The boys set out to get it back and ask the ancient grandfather, the great white peccary, and grandmother, the great white tapir, who are healers, to help them travel and get the arm back. They bring the boys to Seven Macaw and remove his loose teeth, which were blue jewels, and then they replace them with white corn. So does this explain why a macaw doesn't have teeth? They remove his lordship, his riches, and his jewels, and his beauty, and thus his claims to greatness. In losing his greatness, he eventually dies, and Hanupu gets his arm back. The grandfather and grandmother became rich with their genius at the encouragement of the boys. Let's move on to 400 boys. The death of 400 boys at the hand of Zipacna, maker of mountains, after they try to kill him. 400 boys see Zipacna bathing on the shore. They are dragging a log for their hut. Zipacna goes to them and asks them what they're doing. They ask him to help them move it for them. 400 boys decide to kill him because he self-magnifies. They dig a big hole with a plan to wedge him down into it. They ask Zipacna to dig it down farther. Zipacna figures out that 400 boys are trying to kill him and digs a hole for himself to survive their ploy. They try to trap him, to crush him with a log and listen to see if he's dead. Zipacna cries out in deception, and the boys rejoice that he is dead. The boys watch for 3 days, after which they celebrate. They look for ants to eat Zipacna's body. The ants eat Zipacna's hair and nails, which he has cut off to deceive the boys. So 400 boys think he's dead. Their drink is ready on the 3rd day. They get drunk. Zipacna brings down the hut on all 400 boys, killing them all for their deception. These boys are etched in the sky as a constellation. What can we learn from this about cosmology, social status, and teachings? I'll leave you with that. The defeat of Zipacna at the hands of Hanupu and Zbalanque is another story. Seeing the 400 boys killed by Zipacna, they observe what Zipacna eats, which is crabs and fish. These boys, Hanupu and Zbalanque, create a fake crab. They come across Zipacna, who's hungry, and tell them that tell them about the fake crab food and where to find it. He tries to get the food and the crab and sees he needs to enter on his back. So he does, and is crushed by the great mountain, which rests on his chest, and he turns to stone. This explains how the great mountain called Mayan came to be. Hanupu and Zbalanque deceive Zipacna, who claims to be maker of mountains, by crushing him under one. Deception, once again, wins the day. The defeat of Earthquake by Hanupu and Zbalanque. Earthquake, another son of Seven Macaw, is the breaker of mountains, or so that is his claim to magnify himself, much like his father. Hurricane, newborn thunderbolt, and raw thunderbolt ask Hanupu and Zbalanque to lure him into settling down in the east. Earthquake demolishes mountains by tapping his foot on the ground. The boys go to him and ask him where he's going. Nowhere, just staying here, breaking mountains, he says. They tell him of a great mountain growing so high it has no birds. When Earthquake asks where it is, they say, in the east. They lead him east and kill birds to eat along the way. When they cook the birds, they add gypsum plaster to it. Does a ritual derive from this? I wonder, in the ancient culture of the Mayans. When Earthquake smells the birds cooking, he is hungry and asks to eat. He eats the poisoned birds, and they continue east. Because of the gypsum cooked earthen into the bird, he cannot break the mountain when they arrive. He never recovers. The boys bind him and bury him in the earth. This is why earthquakes arise from the earth, maybe. I wonder. Hanupu and Zbalanque are heroes of that age, and countless tales are told about them. Then they go on to tell how Hanupu and Zblanke are born. These are just a few of the stories from the beginning of Popol Vuh. The themes, which I mentioned kind of parenthetically throughout, are along the lines of other familiar themes, such as the power of the word. If you've ever read the preamble of the Gospel of John, you'll recognize the power of the word. Humans are praisers of gods and counters of the days in agricultural settings. How the gods fail sometimes is another theme, as with some of the early attempts that they fail. And the interactions and pride that brings down the human-like gods, like Seven Macaw, earthquake, and Zipacna, as well as how humans cheat the gods or steal from them or deceive them. These are all very common themes. These are very familiar all over the world of myth. And so that's why we cover them, these Popol Vuh themes. In the next presentation, we'll talk about the role of myths as antidotes to chaos, giving order to a meaningless world.